Season 2 is finally among us, guys.
What is being married like?
Yeah, we've been married for 1.5 years now. For me, I'm pregnant. Thanks, Fiance.
And I'm excited for this new adventure of Season 2. Let's go.
Yay.
Hey guys, welcome back.
Hey.
It's Naomi and I am here once again with the lovely Sion, Beth, Leidy, and our guest on the show today is Katarina.
What's up, baby?
Oh, she doesn't speak yet. She's how old,
to.
Leidy?
Do you have anything to say? Yeah, grab the microphone.
Oh, love it.
So today, one, we wanted to introduce you to Katarina, because that's a really big change for you, Leidy. So do you want to just tell us initially, how old is Katarina?
Yeah, so Katarina is 5 months old right now, right? That's how old you are. And she's just this amazing, happy kid. 90% of the time.
She loves that she's on the spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You enjoying it? You had enough? Yeah, I think. Where's Daddy?
So we thought it would be a good way to start this this episode. Bye. Just because today we are going to be talking about babies.
Yay.
Kind of.
Baby.
Yeah.
Love the topic, by the way.
Exactly. Very relevant for Leidy. So we wanted to talk about babies. We wanted to talk about family planning, conception, contraception. And I think this is obviously just a good flow even from our last conversation. Because the last time we talked, we were talking about sex.
So naturally.
And naturally that may or may not lead to a baby. So just to start, I would love to initially just hear a bit from you, Leidy. Obviously, Beth and I, we're both married, maybe having conversations about kind of whether we would want kids, things like that. But you are fully in it right now as a mom and have been for 5 months. So I would love to just ask you, firstly, did you plan for Katarina to kind of be brought into this world when she was, or was it a bit more of an unexpected thing?
Yeah, she was planned. Yeah, we were 6 years married at that point. And the year before, Edward and I, Edward is my husband, we talked a lot about how it would be to grow our family. So we were really talking about all you can imagine, like how it would look like financially, what would we need to improve, how could we bring her to what we are already living and how much we would have to adapt. So yeah, it was planned, but it was like a 1 year kind of planning, not only on the getting pregnant, but also like how that would look like for us.
Yeah. And you and Dudu were married for 6 to 7 years beforehand, right? So I'm just curious, even within that, for you, what was kind of maybe even before you got married or when you had just gotten married, what was your expectation of starting a family? Had you kind of been hoping for a kid? Was that something that was on your radar? Was there a set age that you were thinking, that's when you have kids?
Yeah, I always wanted to have kids. I actually thought we were going to have kids 3 years after we were married. We're like, 3 years is good, like just the two of us. We dated for almost 3 years when we got married. So I was hoping it would happen a bit sooner. I always dreamed about being a mom. So it's like really a dream coming true right now. And hopefully we'll have another 2 or 3, I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, it was something that was always on my heart since I was a teenager. When I would think in the future, I don't know, for me, I always dreamed about things that would get done or, I don't know, work and stuff, but never as big as having a family. That was the one thing I always dreamed of. And she's here now and making it real.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Yeah. And
So cute.
with that, having a family, having kids, it changes the dynamic, I'm sure, even within your marriage. So between you and Dudu and now what that picture is of having Katarina as an additional person in the mix of everything. Are there any kind of like key things that you have noticed, either you kind of miss from before she was born, or then also some things maybe that you're like, wow, we never had this before in this way, and it's so fresh and new and enjoyable.
Yeah. I think our dynamic 100% it changed. But because we talked so much about it before, we were kind of ready. Like we knew it was going to change. But our perspective on this change, it was a positive thing. We never looked at that as something bad. It was never, oh, well, we better like enjoy as much as we can now, because once we have a kid, our life, like it's gone. It's like having a kid and just being responsible for a kid and not doing things, not dreaming about like having holidays or enjoying life, you know?
Yeah.
We were really looking forward to have that switch in our lives. As I said, we were 6 years to get married once I got pregnant. Now over 7 years. And we look back and we're like, yeah, that's great. We really had a good time, just the two of us. But now it's our chance to start new adventures and start a new season in our life, having her. And sometimes it's challenging because she's only 5 months. We are learning her limits, how she reacts when she's in a different environment. She's very curious. So usually she just gets entertained very easily. You just walk around and she's like amazed about everything. So that helps a lot. But also sometimes she will have a limit of how long she will stay out. Or, you know, we went to London with her once, and the first time I think we went out with her, we thought she was okay to stay a bit longer, and actually not. So we were like, when we sit in the restaurant to eat, she's like crying and like nothing would stop. And then we had to get her and like, okay, let's go home and like just wrap everything up and like get in the train. And she was still a bit upset, you know, but it's really a process of understanding what works or not. It's going to happen. But I think we had our minds already prepared. There's no way you can be 100% prepared to be a parent. Like I kept asking people like, how do you become a mom? And they're like, oh, once the baby's born, the mom is born. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to see about that, you know, because it's crazy, but it has so much on like your hormones, the way your body reacts once the baby's born. It's just God, you know, God made us that way, and it just works. I'm not gonna go through like postpartum depression or things like that. I don't have the depth or like the knowledge to go through that. But the natural way, it's like really when the baby is born, your chemicals and hormones, they just go crazy, and they're like, that's my child, you know. So sorry, I went through.
Is it true? Like, because like a lot of my friends have kids, and it's just like, you know, there's like a bit of an anxiety of like, oh, like, how am I going to do this? But like, as a first-time mom, you don't know what you're doing. You're kind of figuring out as you go, right? Because you don't know what kind of child you're going to have, and you know, you're building this connection, and what might work for another mother might not. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the first time you're a mom, you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but you're figuring it out, and you do figure it out.
It's a process. In the beginning, I was so afraid to be by myself in the house with her. My mom came a week before I had my a week before I gave birth. And she stayed for another 3 weeks after that. And that was a big help for me, because I was able to focus 100% on taking care of Katarina. And I had my mom taking care of me. You know, she was really, she would cook for Eduardo and I. Overnight, Eduardo and I, we were 100% on it. Like if we need to make a bottle, if we need to feed her, if we need to change her, everything. My mom was staying in a different house. So she would come early in the morning, but sometimes she would come and we would still be asleep. So she would get breakfast ready. So once we were up, we would have breakfast, you know. So during the day, she would be on it, and then she would have her time after in the evening. But that was one thing that was so helpful for me, having my mom present during that time, because it's so caring. Like you leave the hospital with a newborn baby.
Yeah,
and I'm like, how am I qualified to look after that child? It's crazy. You just give birth and people are like, okay, congratulations.
I'd be like, nurse, can you come with me, please?
Right? Like, here are all the papers. Here's how it is.
Yeah.
And I also had a really good friend of mine. She's one of my best friends. She was my midwife. She's a midwife. So she stayed with me almost the whole labor. I had a relative long labor. So most of the time she was with me, and that I am aware that not a lot of women are able to have someone taking care of you like that, you know, and you have a relationship. So I feel extremely blessed to have her with me during that time. And once like I was at home, I would message her about like random stuff. At one time I messaged her, it was 3 a.m. in the morning, and she got the phone straight away. She said that she kept the phone on, like the volume on, so she knew if I messaged her, like she would be able to see it straight away. And I'm like, I feel so loved and taken care of, you know, because I had her during that time.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really beautiful. It's like the picture of like the way that community and family can really come alongside when new seasons just happen for us in our lives, you know? And even just as you're sharing about your mom, I was like, that's such a beautiful image of like your mom who birthed you and at one point was probably being supported by her parents. Yes. It's now this continual thing of like, you've just given birth to this child and she's flown all the way over and she's there and she's supporting you to support Katarina and so on, so on, so on, you know? I wanted to ask, Beth, you have obviously been married as well for not as long, but for a year and a half now?
Just that.
Yeah. Have you and Jonas talked about kind of starting a family? Has that been something that beforehand you were excited about, or?
Yeah. When Jonas and I first talked about getting married, we were like, okay, I guess we should talk about kids. Do you want kids? And we were both like, I guess so, one day. So we weren't like, oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, yes, we did.
Yeah. It sounds like you're like, it's the thing to do, I guess.
I know. It was like, I was like, I always have this thing of like, I want to be a mum, but I didn't want it soon. Like that seemed like a massive inconvenience. But he loves kids as well. And so then we got married and we were like, oh, we'll probably wait like 5-7 years, have a really long time or whatever. But then just recently, I feel like I'm retelling Naomi this story. We've spoken about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Recently, I kind of, what was I doing? Because I've been like on the pill, contraceptive pill.
Yeah.
The whole time I've been married, and it worked for me really well. And I was reading this book. It's called Love Thy Body by Nancy Pearcey. Highly recommend. It's a great book. And it was just talking about contraceptive pill and some like pros and cons, and then like how and just like the ins and outs of contraception and family planning and everything like that, and how sometimes we kind of make the baby the enemy when it comes to like sex and stuff. Like that's the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
And especially when I've grown up like my whole life, or my whole life, like my teen years into my adult life, like having sex, and then like the worst thing that could possibly happen to you is having a baby.
Get pregnant.
Like that's the thing of like, now it's weird when my friends say I'm pregnant, you're like, you find it hard not to go, oh crap, what are you gonna do? It's like, wow, you know, it's a really happy thing.
Yeah.
And so I was reading this book, and then I realized like, I was like, I never actually had this conversation with God of like, when's the right time to have a baby, or when do you want us to have a baby? I just decided for me when was the right time, 7 years down the line. Don't know why I picked that.
Yeah.
And so I spoke to Jonas about this. It's like, we've never like, I said, I've given every part of, because I'm a missionary, you guys know that. I've given my life to God and to serving God, but I hadn't given this part of my life to serving God. And so it kind of started me this question inside of my head. And I was like, well, and so I started to kind of pray about it. And I just asked God, like, God, when you want me to have a baby, please would you put this desire in my heart? And this desire started to come inside of me like over the past few months, or it's been quite recent, like this desire to like have a baby. And then I was thinking, actually, the reason I want to wait, what am I waiting for?
Yeah.
Like I want the same life now that I do in 5 to 7 years time. I don't want to get things out the way now and then settle down. I want to be living the same life, traveling. I want to be doing that with kids. I might be naive in thinking that's very easy. I don't think it's a very easy thing to do, but I want the same life. And so I also decided, I figured out actually for me personally, the contraceptive pill seemed like actually not a good idea in the end. I read about the dangers of it and about the side effects of it. And once I came off of it, I felt so much better. I didn't realize it was actually suppressing so much of my, I guess, emotions and my hormones and stuff. And once I came off it, I felt really free.
Yeah.
And so now Yanis and I were talking about it. We've decided that we're going to maybe soon start trying for a baby. We're currently in a school that we're doing. And so we're going to wait a little bit till after that because I don't fancy having morning sickness in the Middle East, which is where I'm going to lead a team. So we decided we want to try soon-ish.
Yeah.
So
exciting.
My mindset changed.
Season 3 people.
How many kids are we having?
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a journey that it's quite recent for me that's happened because I've only been married a year and a half. It seems really crazy and soon, but I do have this desire and I want to be a young mom. I want to be having the same life. It'd be easier to be traveling around with kids now than it will be in 10 years time.
Yeah. And Beth, I wanted to even just ask you about that because obviously, as I said, as part of this whole discussion, contraception comes into the conversation of conception and family planning and things. I just wanted to ask, even around that, for you, what was that journey even of your contraception, of initially going on contraception? Was it something that you felt very informed about when you started?
Yeah.
And even I know you told me of the element of kind of coming off it, where you started noticing that your hormones were really affected by it.
Right.
I'd love to hear a bit more of that.
Yeah. I started the contraceptive pill when I was in my teen years because I was sexually active from when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Actually, my mom was like, "You're going on the pill," when she found out that was happening, which I'm very grateful for. And so it was very normal. And it was kind of cool actually at school. Everybody was on the pill, like you kind of like everybody was doing it. So it was. I didn't learn. It was just you don't get pregnant, and it was cheap. You didn't have to buy condoms. Like it was easier. You don't have to think about it. And I'd always been on the pill until I stopped having sex for a while. So until I was 21. Now I'm 25. 25.
You sure?
I think until I was 21, I was on the pill, and I stopped because I'd stopped having sex. I never really learned about it. I just thought that's well easier than trying to think about condoms all the time.
Yeah.
And I didn't want an injection, and I didn't want to put anything in my body that I couldn't easily stop doing.
Yeah.
And so I'd always been on it, and then I stopped for a while, and then once I got engaged, I started to go on it again to give my body the process. And I never really thought about it. And then I started to read about like the side effects of it, and after you've been on it a while, it's also worse for you, I think, as well. And so I came off it straight away. And so I'm not just not using any contraception. We use condoms a lot, and we use this app, this temperature taking app, which I'm really bad at actually. Which I think is the same one you use.
It is. I think it is the same one.
But I noticed I felt a lot freer.
Yeah.
I don't really know how to describe it. I feel like I didn't realize how much the pill was affecting me until I came off of it. Like I felt like a lot clearer. Like my hormones weren't as crazy. And I just felt a lot healthier not being on it. And so I feel a lot happier not being on it now.
Yeah.
And I also feel like it kind of, in some ways, maybe feels to me like the most natural way. Like, I don't know if this makes sense, but in some ways it's kind of still giving like, I'm not controlling life or death here. Like I'm not altering my body. Yes, I'm using condoms. But I think that's like, in my head, it's the most natural way I can have contraception and have some element of wisdom in my family planning. I'm still working it out. It's very new to me. Honestly, I'm not set on my views of it. I'm experimenting, but this is really working for me now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. I think that was kind of the conversation even Connor and I had, obviously, before we were getting married. I think even in the first like few months of us dating, Connor was like, "So, do you want kids?" Like, all right, Connor. I was like, yeah, like, and I think for me, it's similar. I've always had it where it's like, oh, I think being a mom is such an epic thing to be. Like, it's so impactful. All of us have parents, and I think being a parent, like the fact that you're able to bring new life into the world and then raise them up and teach them and kind of champion them into things in this world that can impact this world, I find really exciting and really awesome. So I was like, yeah, that's like, obviously that's sick. Like, but I've never been someone who has been like, oh, I just like see a baby and I'm just craving a baby.
Right. Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
But I think we had that conversation of even the contraception. And I think I was looking up contraceptives because I, as I said in the last episode, hadn't had sex before marriage, and was just trying to figure out the right thing for me. And one of the things that really was like significant for me was realizing when I talked to a lot of my friends who were on the pill. And again, I'm not medical. This is just me talking from my genuine everyday conversations with friends and family and people like that. But something that I noticed is I had quite a few friends who had been on the pill or were on the pill. And I know a lot of them said that it really impacted their kind of their mood or kind of even mental health elements of like feeling much lower, like having less energy, like some things like that. And already we had talked as well previously about kind of my chronic pain, chronic fatigue, like my mental health. And so I think for me, that was such a critical thing that I was like, wow, I really don't want to put anything else in my body that sounds quite likely to impact me and kind of maybe pull me lower. And so I think that for me was kind of the natural journey then that took me to this it's called natural cycles, I'm not here advertising, I think it works for some, and definitely I think for people who have much more consistent kind of cycles. Yeah, I definitely have friends who it hasn't worked for them as well, and they've gone for other things. But yeah, I think similar to you, where it's like I've really enjoyed the process of that, of like it feeling a little bit more like that I have a grip of what my body is doing every cycle, and kind of So
you never went into the pill, you never took? Never had the pill.
I didn't.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I never did. So I have no idea what it would do to me.
Let's do it.
Try it out. Let's do it out.
Dang.
I was on the pill for, I don't know. I stopped in 2018, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 23. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm making the math now. I think I was for like 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I started when I was 17. So then, like 5-6 years.
Yeah.
I stopped because exactly like that. Like I just didn't feel like myself.
Yeah.
I just felt like I didn't feel a thing.
Yeah.
I felt like every day I just felt the same. And also my libido was non-existent,
Yeah, it really affects your sex drive.
It's crazy. Like I think we talked about this when we were like brainstorming about the season, and it's crazy. I decided to not be in the pill for a whole month without telling Eduardo. Very dangerous decision. I know. I do not encourage you to do that without talking to your husband. But here's the thing. Have you heard of pull and pray? Yes. We've been using that. Wow, this episode is also getting a bit graphic. Yes. I'm sorry. Basically, like we've been doing this since forever. And also being on the pill. So because we kind of had that as well, I was like, I think it's safe to just try it being 1 month out of the pill. I didn't tell him, as I said. And through the month, I just felt completely different. Like I felt that my libido went up again. I didn't feel empty of feelings. Like I could actually react to things and like get excited or be sad. Even like things would happen and I would just be like so neutral to the situations. I was really getting concerned. So after that 1 month, I talked to Eduardo. I was like, did you feel anything different? Did you feel that I was different this month? And he gave me some examples and I'm like, okay, I was not on the pill this last month and I just feel good. And then he looked at me like, you never going back to that thing again.
Really?
Like, no, because he really felt the difference.
Yeah.
A lot of that, the libido, of course. Yeah. So he was like a big fan of not going back.
Yeah.
But that was something we talked through and like, what kind of, like, what are we going to use and everything. So I kept the information of my cycle on an app. I forgot the app because I didn't have a cycle for like over a year now. So forgot the name, but it really helps me to see like how my mood is. I can add like a bunch of information and I know because of the app helping me. I know when I'll be on my period.
Yeah.
Again, so that was a really big help.
Yeah.
It also helped once we decided to have a baby. But yeah, that was just pretty much what I've been doing, and the pull and pray. And then people, I had a lot of friends say like, "You're crazy doing that. Like you'll be pregnant before you want it." And I'm like, has been working for like, I don't know, 7 years pretty much, because I was the worst person to take the pill. I would take one day in the morning, the other day in the evening, the other day I would just not take it. You know, I was terrible. So that is even worse, because the level of like each pill is different for each day. Like has all of those things that will influence. So because I was already doing it wrong, it made it even worse for my case.
It's funny. It's like with the pill, it's like, it's a contraceptive because obviously, you know, all the chemicals and hormones or whatever that it impacts. But then at the same time, you're like, well, it just kills your libido. So it's a good way of not getting pregnant. You never want to have sex.
My sex drive totally increased once the pill came out my system.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Wow. Praises.
Praise the Lord.
And Sion, obviously you are not married currently.
No,
but I'm sure.
but
I'm sure, as with anyone, even when you don't have a boyfriend at the time, it's like you're gonna have those conversations of, at some point, do I want to get married? Do I want to have kids? I'd even love to hear from you. Where would you kind of sit in that, of thinking of, would you want children in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think like having so many friends who have kids, there's moments where I'm like, I'm good, you know, and then there's moments I'm like, oh, they're so cute, you know. I think I grew up with like having 9 siblings, and I'm like, I don't know how my parents did it. Like, God bless you guys. Yeah. Not for me. But I do love kids. I think I've always said I want 2 kids, you know, a boy and a girl. Cool, done, you know.
What if it's a boy and a boy?
Okay, good, you know. I'm sure I love them. Yeah, and I think there's an aspect of it too. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I told like 3 friends now, because at first I asked like, Mom, when I have kids, I want you to be in the delivery room. She's like, no, that's what your husband's for. And I'm like, no, Mom, I want you. And then I was like, told 3 of my friends, I'm like, can you be in there? Because I feel like I'd be just like so like wild and like scared and stuff like that. But I don't know. I do think I would love to have kids someday, and but you know, also I'm like TikTok. No.
Do you want to adopt any kids?
Do I want to adopt kids? I mean, yeah. I mean, honestly, if for whatever reason, like let's say I wasn't able to have kids, like I would love to adopt. But either way, I think, yeah, I would love to adopt. It's something that it's so hard to like. I don't consistently think about it. Yeah. If I'm being honest. Yeah. Until you know I'm in a relationship, then I think maybe I was like, I like to make, you know, so a little you and me. Yeah. But yeah, I think I would someday love to. I'm not like big family, but I always wanted to. Whether I adopt one and then have on my own, be perfect. But yeah.
And that is the crazy thing. Even what you were saying, I had this like revelation, like moment about this whole picture of marriage and children and that kind of thing. And it was this thing of what you were saying of like the kind of like the husband and the wife, they come together and then through their love and even through sex, which we talked about in the last episode, through intimacy, through their knowing of one another and like the enjoyment of one another, then life is able to be birthed. And I don't know how it came to my mind, but I was thinking, I was like, oh my word. I was like, what a clear picture in many ways of the dynamic also between God, the Trinity, and then also the creation of humanity. And I was like, it talks about it obviously where it's like, and man and woman were made in God's image. Yeah. But I'm like, there's this crazy, to me, this beauty in it of this thing of like Father, Son, Holy Spirit, this triune God enjoying one another, which then creates new life. And now we have the opportunity to continue doing that as people here. And I think there is something, that's the thing is like, for me, there's something in particular that when you're like, that I found from being married to Connor, which is this desire more so than just, I want a kid for the sake of having a kid, but that thing of like the two becoming one in a physical form where I'm like, I would love to see like you and me as a mini thing running around and just the discovery even within that of what will they have of you, what will they have of me, what will they have of neither one of us that's totally unique to them.
Yeah.
And I guess that for you right now, Leidy, is the joy that you also get to be experiencing.
Yeah, it is. I was just thinking about that because I love seeing characteristics from Edward and I on her.
Yeah.
She looks just like her daddy.
She
I
does.
need to accept that. Listen, if you see pictures of Edward as a baby, she's very, very similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing the feeling of co-creating with God.
Yeah.
Like once she was born, when we were holding her, it was just crazy. Like, you know, that feeling of, oh yeah, I made that. Like, no, literally, she like that. She was inside of me.
Yeah.
Now she's out. And it's this amazing feeling and terrifying at the same time. Like the weight of like responsibility as well is quite big, if I'm being honest. And it's amazing when you have God. It's something Edward and I, we talk a lot, is we don't know how it would be to have a child and not knowing about the love of God and not knowing that like God loves her since she was inside of me. You know, even before she was born, we could feel how loved she was. We already loved her so much. And now that she's here, like present, and she's growing and she's becoming her own person, it's beautiful to see, and also teaches me so much about the love of God for us. It's an amazing experience to have every day. Also teaches a lot about patience.
Sure.
You know, I say that is amazing, that it's just a really incredible experience, but I don't want to romanticize the experience because it has its struggles. You have difficulties. You sometimes you may feel that you don't know what you're doing, and maybe you don't know what you're doing, you know. So it is amazing, but it's also not perfect.
Yeah.
You know, it's not.
Yeah. I have a question for you. Okay. And I want you to be 100% honest.
I'll try.
Scale 1 to 10, how painful was it to deliver beautiful kids?
That's a good question. It is extremely painful, but I'll tell you that the way that your body feels up to the moment you give birth, when they say like, oh, you forget afterwards, like it's kind of that, because once she was out, my body didn't have to push her through anymore. And all the contractions and the pain, it kind of like left my body. Eduardo, he was with me the whole time. He was like face to face to me. I had a water birth. Best experience I could have. I was one of those moms that would be like, oh my gosh, in the water, like all the fluids and everything. I didn't care at that point because I was in so much pain. I decided to not have an epidural. I decided to not have any kind of anesthesia or whatever. That was my choice because it was something I wanted to. I have nothing against that. I feel that if you want to have, it's up to you. But I wanted to have the experience without the epidural or, you know, as natural as possible. And I got to have, I felt very blessed going through that.
So the water birthing experience for you was good.
Was amazing because the water was warm and it felt comfortable. And because of the position she was, I could not be laying down on my back. And every time I would sit down, it would be very, very painful. I had a 24 hours labor. So the point when my water broke and she was born, it was almost 24 hours.
Wow.
But it's because her water, a lot of information, I'm sorry.
I'm sweating here.
The water was broke on top, so it took a long time for all the water to go down. And her head was kind of holding the water, so I would like dilate, like I was dilating. But then her head would put the pressure, so it would kind of like
Dang.
Come
Because
back.
I heard like some people like why wouldn't you stand like to like give birth? Because they said that we were just like, I feel like the baby would come out easier. And then some people was like, I don't know why thought we laid down. And I'm like, I don't know. I've never had a kid.
Yeah, I heard some theories about the laying down on like on your back about like I don't want to tell because I don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say like something that is not real or whatever. But the most natural way, based on what I studied, I went through, was really like if you can be standing or on your knees or like I was on the water on my knees. So that helped me a lot. That I did not sit for, I don't know, 8 or 9 hours at some point because of how painful it was.
Yeah.
So yes, it's painful, but it's something you can.
It's worth it. It's beautiful.
It's so worth it.
Yeah.
And Leidy, I feel like I remember talking to you briefly, and you told me that you actually had felt quite scared about the giving birth moment at one point in your pregnancy. So how was that in terms of like what was where were you at then, and then having come through and having obviously given birth to her? Would you have something to like speak to like Leidy before, younger Leidy?
So the young me, wow, you would be so proud for what we went through. But I was scared in the normal. I feel like in the normal level that you would be scared. Like it's something you never went through. Literally, she was 3 kilos and 500 and something. I always get it. But she was like 3.5 kilos. Baby. She was like a regular size. She wasn't a massive baby. Either way, it's a baby that is going to go through, right? So I was scared of that. But at the same time, I did all I could to be prepared for that moment. So everything that helped me to feel more confident was understanding that come on, we are all here. So women had to go through that for so many years, you know.
Yeah, seriously.
We can do it. My mom went through that. My grandma's went through that. What could I do to help me at that moment? Like playing, having music playing, the light, having people that are helps me to be comfortable. So Eduardo was by my side the whole time. He didn't leave my side at any moment. He would talk to me. He would like make massage, and he would always like pass me the gas and air. Gas and air was the only thing I had. And at some point I got mad at that thing. I was like, that thing just doesn't help anymore, you know. And then I just went there without it. But it was the one thing that helped me as well. And it's really what helped was going through this mentality, you know, I can do it. I can do it. And I was praying. We had some worship songs playing in the background as well. And
in that moment, you just kind of like, I got to do this. It's a head thing. Like, well, it's gonna come out.
I wasn't really scared of the labor. I don't know. I didn't know what to expect.
Right.
You know, I never felt, my body never went through that.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, that pain, it's for a reason. I had this class with this midwife. She was saying if you had a broken arm at some point, or I don't know, if you got hurt, that pain is a result of something. And like, you don't want to feel that way. You know, it's of course, it's painful. It hurts.
Yeah.
But the pain you feel on the labor, it's for a reason. Yeah. It's going to have an end. Once the baby's out, hopefully the pain is going to be gone as well, you know. So that was kind of the mentality I went through, and helped me a lot. But I did get scared by the end because I was already 10 centimeters. And I think the third time I was pushing for real. Every time you have a contraction, the midwife will come to listen the baby heart. So that's how they know that the baby is okay through the contraction. And then I had this third push. As I said, 24 hours. I was exhausted. Yeah. I was trying to drink water. I was trying to be active. But by the end, I was like, what's gone? You know? And then the midwife checked the heartbeats, and she said her heartbeats are like kind of going down. So the next time you really need to push.
Wow.
And that really got me like, okay, I have no choice right now. I really need to push her. Otherwise, I don't know what the complications will be. Maybe a C-section or something. And then I had Eduardo right on my face. He was holding both my hands. And then I was like by the pool. And and I just pushed her. And then once she was out, like Eduardo says that my face kind of like went from painful and like agony to like relaxed. I felt like I could see properly. I felt that I had kind of like like a cloud in front of me, and then boom, I could see. Okay, and then we're holding her and like happy and everything. The midwife had to take her because she wasn't crying, so they start to get concerned, and then she kind of start to get a bit blue, and they were like, okay, we're just gonna take her very quickly. But then she passed the door, and then I could hear her crying in the corridor, so they just brought her back. But they checked, she was all good.
Well, it's amazing, Leidy. Well done. I'm always amazed. I definitely am someone on the other side where I'm like, the idea of actually the birthing the child, I'm not scared of that many things. I'm like, that is scary. But it's like you said, is that it's happened for thousands of years. So that helps
just feel
me.
like a superwoman.
And I think obviously, I've just really enjoyed having this conversation with you guys. I think there are so many other things that we could touch on as well. Even just of the one thing that you mentioned, Beth, of this thing of sometimes that children can be perceived as a burden rather than a blessing in life, is that's really something that I do think there needs to be more conversation about, and even more understanding on, and more discussion around. And even as well, Leidy, hearing about kind of some of your journey as well with now raising Katarina and seeing the way the heart of the father over his children, and I love it because it again just shows this way that the journey is a joy, and it's beautiful, and it's wonderful, and it's also messy, and it's difficult. It's not all just easy, And I love the way that sets such a good picture, even of then kind of understanding a bit more how God interacts with us, and kind of the things that he would maybe feel with us as we're growing, as we're learning, as we're being shaped, as we're wrestling against him. So thank you guys for talking, and thanks for sharing. And we will see you next time for our next Girl Talk topic.
Woohoo.